It's exciting! Welcome to TableTok with your dynamic host, Deasia Bedford, and her trusted but strange sidekick, Rick Tobin. TableTok, straight talk in a world filled with crooked words. Join us and listen in for powerful wisdom and facts, for they are the coin of the realm when dining with us in honest discussion here at TableTok. Welcome, everybody. It's Rick Tobin and Deasia again here at Table Talk. And today we'll talk about the school systems and the problems with them, why Johnny can't cope. And they are now being, let's just say, complicated because of politics, religious interests, and let's be very blunt about it. It's all about the money. And as we all know, any of us who've worked in the school systems, if you try to change anything at all, there's resistance because it's all about butts in seats. They get paid for the number of times and hours that students are in the seats, and the sausage factory must move on. I'm opening this up to Deasia today. She's come out of that system quite recently, and she has seen it firsthand, many of the failings and things that are not working. Deasia, take it away.
I'm fresh out. It sounds like I'm fresh out of prison, but that's honestly what school kind of felt like. Every day waking up, I felt a sense of dread almost. Yes, you have your friends and the social cliques and things like that, but you knew when you went into that classroom, it was just something else. The atmosphere was honestly so depressing, even though, I don't know if you guys know, some high schools have more bright colors for school colors, but even then the hallway seems so gloomy. I wanted to reference my own school, but so we don't get sued, I will not. You get this depressing feeling, even though your school is like centered around sports or anything like that. When it comes to standardized tests such as the STAR test or the SAT or the pre-SAT, you see this gray cloud almost hanging over everybody and the stress that everybody carries with themselves. And I honestly feel like we're in a assembly line and the information is just handed out to us like that. We all get the same information at the same time and expect to produce the same results, but I think they fail to understand that we as people are individuals and we take in stuff differently than our peers and all those around us. Just, with the school pressures, I see so many kids getting burnt out so quickly, and I believe that burnout is also affecting our personal lives outside of the classroom when we go home. I know personally when I was in high school, when I got home, I didn't even want to sit down and eat with my family. I just wanted to shower, do my homework, and go to bed. That's how burnt out I was. I didn't feel the energy to even socialize with my own family.
Now, I want to mention something that I've seen, and I think this relates to this, the pressures that occur during the testing themselves. As a substitute, I was present during some of the STAR testing in the middle grade schools from 7 through 9. And it was like you had been locked in, to put it very likely, into a gulag, that you had your masters hanging over the top of you like prison guards, watching every step. It was just incredible pressure on these kids. And I know that after one of these sessions, and I saw what these kids went through, there was one seventh grader who committed suicide at that school afterwards. The pressures are so, and they'll tell the kids, oh, if you feel nervous, if you feel pressured, please come and see the counselors and so forth. Deasia, how realistic is that about even seeing a counselor?
Well, if you could go different ways to meet up with your personal counselor. I know the school I went to, we have multiple counselors for your alphabetical section or whatnot. But if it was an emergency, your teacher could write you a pass to go. But what is really an emergency? It came down to that. Like, what does the teacher consider an emergency? And even then, you can set up appointments and stuff like that. But I feel like even though I'm stressed, what would be talking to a counselor do for me? Okay, I go to the counselor, I sit there, I tell them I'm stressed, I don't know what to do. They're just going to read me the same script that I easily heard from the teachers. Don't worry about it, it's just a test, it doesn't count against you. You're telling me this, yet if I perform badly, I get put into intermediate classes, or I need to attend extra tutoring, or I don't meet this benchmark that everybody has to meet. And it just stresses me out because I'm like, I'm in AP classes. But some people, like myself, we don't do well when it comes to sitting in front of a packet and regurgitating information. By all means, if I was in a free setting and you were to ask me about any of the subjects I'm studying, I could give you fact from fact from fact and also incorporate other things that I've learned outside of the classroom that I've seen on the internet or read in a book. But if you were to ask me to do that same thing, but on paper, timed or anything like that, it's like my brain shuts down. It's just that pressure we as people feel, especially as we know that not only are we taking this test, but we're going to be compared to our peers, and we have somebody standing over us, watching us, having expectations of us. And if they do bad, if we do bad, it reflects on them and their teaching. So not only are we taking this test for ourselves, but we also have the weight of, oh, the school board is going to see this and look at our teachers because we didn't do good. And I feel like there's some great teachers out there, but not everybody's teachable or not everybody grasps things as fast. So that adds on to the pressure like, oh, we're going to make our favorite teacher look bad because we didn't do good on this test. It's just all that pressure on the shoulders of children, like little adolescents and things like that. I just think it's unbelievable how they put us in a room like that, in lines at that.
I also wanted to mention the fact that the system changed drastically under the Obama administration. I belong to the old school in management for business that you can't manage what you can't measure. Okay, that's for production and that's for looking at goals and objectives. But that was never the goal, the idea behind education. Education is a holistic environment where you look at the whole person, what they're growing, what are they learning, are they becoming a functional person? Not somebody who can sit down and figure out which of the four choices are the best to make, how the essay is supposed to look, is this spelled right, did I get this formula right? How are they going to function as an individual? Part of this, a great example of this, I've seen the core, although Texas does not accept the core training system in their public schools, I saw it in the charter schools here. It's horrible. It's awful. And it disregards the student as a human being. Now you are a machine regurgitating everything we told you. There's no independent thought or instinctual thinking about, well, how does this work? Or, gee, let me evaluate a situation. Let me use some thought of my own. Everything is plugged in like you have to do it this way. This is the way it is. There's no discussion. There's no empathy about the students' needs or their interests. It's all pushed out like a product. And that's not what managing is all about when it comes to human beings. What you're doing is you're trying to be their mentor, not their master. And I've seen this over and over again. Part of it is, and I'd like you to discuss this too a little bit, Deasia. I come from the old school system. There's a reason that Jesus, as a master teacher, had 12 disciples. We know the best teaching environment is 12 to 15 people working with an instructor. They know that in the military, they know that in colleges. They've forgotten it in colleges, unfortunately, and it's all about mass numbers now. And when I got in a situation in one place as a substitute where I walked into a situation of second graders, and they were going into, for the first time, into a computer classroom, and there were 35 of them. These are kids who were 8 or 9 years old, and that's crowd control. And I saw the same thing with the classrooms. They're way overcrowded. There's no individual care or instruction. Everything is mass control, and that's where you get bad behaviors, you get misbehaviors, you get people who get burned out and are not interested because they can't interact and so forth. We have got to reduce the number of students in classrooms. This thing, 32 to 35 students, is insanity. What did you find in your classrooms, Deasia?
Well, since I took AP courses, and for those who don't know what AP means, it means advanced placement. It basically means that you're at a more rigorous pace, a more fast-moving pace. I noticed when it came to my AP courses, I was in a smaller setting than if I was to take a regular class or intermediate class. I knew that the class numbers were smaller in my AP courses. But I also, at some point, took some of my classes were regular classes, and I had one teacher tell me, she told me this, and it all made sense. She was like, do you think everyone in AP is in AP because they're smart? I told her, of course. Advanced placement. We're advanced. We're not smarter than the rest, but we pick up on things faster. She said, no. Schools use AP as a means to filter those who are good and those who are bad. Those who are good and don't have any behavioral issues go into AP courses, while those who are deemed bad, they skip, they disrupt class, they get put into either regular or intermediate classes. And it started to make sense because in all my AP classes, everybody was more quiet, reserved, it was more organized, everybody raising their hand, while in my regular classes, it was more so of an issue. I had people coming in late. The AP classes were all the students were more quiet, more reserved. It was more organized. Everybody was raising their hand. Nobody was speaking over anybody else. While in my regular classes, I had people busting in the classroom late, trying to leave the classroom and ditch, argue with teachers, start arguments with other students. And it all started to come into perspective for me that I think these schools really are using the placement of AP, regular, and intermediate as ways to filter their good apples, average apples, and bad apples. Instead of dividing us in, oh, they learn faster, they need more help, or giving us one-on-one time, they're more so just putting us with our behavioral group. I feel like that's what's really hurting us, because just because I'm a well-mannered student, I might need intermediate classes because I don't pick up on things as fast. Or just because I'm interrupting people or misbehaving, I may pick up on a subject extremely well, just as fast as the AP students are. So I feel like instead of filtering us based off behavior, I feel like they should actually filter us based off who needs what type of care, help, and everything else. And I feel like classrooms should be dwindled to at least a maximum of 15. That's like the max. 20 if it's a large school. But I really feel like the numbers should be dwindled down when it comes to classroom settings so teachers can have more one-on-one time and actually see the progress that their students are making.
I agree with you, and you'll hear things from administrators and saying, well, look, we don't have the money and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, let me express something, and this is where I could be taken out and hanged in Texas for saying this. Oh, you don't have room to reduce the number of students in your classrooms and work through that? How much money did you put into your football team last year in your stadium? Oh, this is where football is a religion here. We can't talk about things like that. Really, your football stadium and your football team, the chances of any of them on that team ever going to a college as a football student and so forth is 1 out of 100 if you're lucky. Then you go, well, they could be pros someday. When they go to a college, maybe 1 out of 1,000 or more might ever be a pro, and then they last 3 or 4 years and they're beat to pieces and they become a vegetable. What are you thinking? You're supposed to be producing and working through a process where the individuals who come out of a school get the best possible opportunities to become functional and happy. Happy, that means self-aware of themselves, individuals in our culture. Now, I will say this about the behavior thing that Deasia was talking about. I've been assaulted in several classrooms. I've also been assaulted when I worked on buses by kids. There are about 1% of the kids in our school systems today who I totally believe are sociopaths. Now, I know you're going to say, what are you saying? I didn't say psychopaths. That's a smaller number, but they're there too. There are some who are absolutely disruptive. They are chemically imbalanced. There's problems with them. They don't even belong in a public school. They need to be in a different kind of environment that's more controlled and oriented towards people who can't relate to other human beings. But no, because of butts and seats, we put these kids in classrooms, and that one kid per class that I found, one kid per class, takes everybody down, slows down the teaching classroom. It isn't that they don't understand what's going on. They want the power of disruption, and we're not doing anything about them. And I don't mean corporal punishment. We've talked about that on another show. We're not beating kids. You need to put them someplace where they're more productive for their growth and so forth, and they don't do well in those group settings. One of the things I learned several years ago when we lived in a different apartment complex, I used to talk to all the kids and everything else. This young black man had just graduated from high school, very angry, and he was with a friend of his, and they were talking about getting into the drug culture and stuff, and I was sitting with him by the pool because I was the pool manager, sort of, the lifeguard. And I said, can I talk with you? And he said, well, yeah. Looking at me like, okay, what does this old white guy want to say to me? And I said, look, I've been a teacher, I've been a counselor, I've been a minister. Let's sit and talk for a while. He opened up, and his friend looked at me real funny. And I asked him a question, and he said no one, his parents, his teachers, his people in his church and stuff had ever asked him that question. What do you like? What turns you on in the morning that you want to do for the rest of your life? What would make you happy? Nobody is asking these kids that. They're telling them what they're going to do. They never ask them, what is your skill? What do you love? What makes you happy when you're doing it? And that's where we're failing. We're telling them, go to these classes, and when you get out of school, you'll be ready. Is that the right way to monitor and work with the child who's going through? How about asking them, what is working for you? What do you want to be? Not what you want to be when you grow up. What right now makes you happy and productive and you feel good about it? We don't ask them.
But here's the thing that's wrong with that. When teachers do ask that question and we give our honest answers and opinions, you kind of see this look of on their face. Like the school I went to, yeah, they offered automotive courses, nursing courses, dental courses, and things like that. But if you were to look at, if a teacher were to ask two different kids, hey, what gets you motivated? What do you want to do once you get out of here? Oh, I want to be a dentist, or I want to be a nurse, or whatnot. And then they look at a different kid and ask them, well, I want to work with my hands. I want to go into automotive. How much you want to bet that teacher's going to look at the dentistry kid or the nursing kid and be like, this kid's going places. The other kid would end up in some small family owned garage fixing up cars.
Yeah.
So even though we're asked those questions, we still have this weight of, is my profession or what I like to do good enough in society standards? You have people like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be all these things to help my community. But at the same time, it's like our community overlooks the little people. And sometimes those little people play a bigger role than the people that we feel like are the real hitters in our community. Like my dad, he's a truck driver. He hauls fuel. Most people's like, oh, he's a truck driver. I see him as, if he doesn't get out of bed or do anything, or if all the people in his industry decide to just lay their butts down and not get up and go to work, we're all screwed. We all run on gas. All our vehicles run on gas. So while other people see them as small truck drivers, I see them as the people that power us and pushes us forward and gets us to where we need to go.
I agree, and we should have value for everyone. That's why when I go to a restaurant, if I'm with someone and they mistreat the people who are bringing the food, I'll get up, I'll pay the waiter or waitress and so forth, and I'll pay for the meal, and then I'll walk away from that person. I'll never talk to him again, because to disavow the value of that person who is serving you is, excuse my church reference for this, is a sin. You have just separated yourself and said, my soul is more important than your soul. That's garbage. And I come from a blue-collar family. My father was a truck driver at one time. Also, he became an electrician, a journeyman electrician. And I know the value of that hard work and what they do and what they put together. And I've worked in many industries, from the oil industry, forestry, in the shipyards, in the mining industry. I've done all that. I know where things come from, farming. That work has just as much value as the guy who's taking hearts out of someone and putting in another person. I'm sorry. The work is valued. And if we don't understand that and don't appreciate it when our students are going through school and looking for places to go and so forth, that's awful. That's downgrading the value of a person's self-value. We've got to quit doing that. Now, one of the things that's happened recently, DH, is, and there's a lot of concern about this, there's states who are going after math books and so forth and other school books because they're saying it's teaching alternate realities or talking about, I guess, the minority situation, the histories and so forth. And that'll be something that parents and school boards will talk about. But how that has anything to do with a math book has got me baffled.
I've heard that math was racist. I wish people thought that when I was doing math and crying at my table. But I think we should specify that just because we're talking about everybody's equal, don't think we're communists. No, we don't think the automotive guy should be paid equally to the doctor. But what we're saying is, we're not talking about money worth. We're talking about self-worth and things like that. I worked at McDonald's, from Walmart to what I do now as a caregiver. And in all those jobs, I don't feel any more important than I did when I was working at McDonald's. When I moved over to Walmart, I didn't feel any more important than what I was doing beforehand. Same as, even though I'm a caregiver now helping take care of people, I feel no more important than how I was when I was taking people's orders at a McDonald's drive-thru. Because I still saw myself as the same person contributing something to somebody. And that just comes with that self-worth. And honestly, going back to the school setting, and in those AP classes, I literally had a friend sit at a desk and cry over a creative assignment paper. Or was it a regular paper? It was just one of those. We had a paper, we were in English, and she literally cried. That's how I knew school was becoming so stressful, that you have children, people literally crying out in public for help.
Absolutely. And there is an elephant in the room. And I'm going to mention this because we need to discuss this openly, and we could do a whole show on this one. This is the parents who know they love their child, but they know that they are not up to the speed of other children because of some kind of a handicap that they have, whether it's mental, emotional, chemical, that they have to be treated, but they do everything they can to put them in the regular system rather than put them in a class that would help them deal with those shortfalls, because the whole implementation of a title of special needs means they are dysfunctional, that there's something less with them, that they're not quite equal to the rest of us. And I've seen so many of these kids put into this stream because the parents were afraid of that, and it set back the rest of the class, and it made those children so unhappy. It was unbelievable. And that's wrong. And we need to reassess that. And I'm talking to all the parents listening now. Don't do this to your child. Find the best pathway. And putting them in a system where, oh, they're with the regular kids, so nobody will ever say anything, they'll do better. No, they won't. They need special training and care of people who understand their special need, whether it's everything from, well, dyslexia all the way to a speech impediment or whatever, that they need something. Get them the people who know how to work with that rather than say, well, we're just going to push them through the regular sausage machine. That's a mistake.
As a parent, you start wanting, it's that drive to wanting the best for your kids. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody. I don't have children, but I can see it from the parent's perspective of wanting what's best for your kid and knowing that your child might have a disability or a learning impairment or anything like that. You actually start to self-reflect and feel like it's your fault of why they had that disability, when I feel like parents should know that some things aren't your fault. Some things aren't taken personal. Some things just happen because they happen. It doesn't make you a bad parent or you have a bad parenting moment. It just simply means that this is your trial that you have to get over and you have to help your kid through. It's okay for something to be wrong with your kid. I think it's that social pressure of my kid has to be normal or my kid has to excel. Everybody's worried about their kid either being average or excelling. Nobody wants to admit if their kid has a impairment. I feel that's why they're so quick to push them and push them and push them, and that could also lead to the burnouts in classrooms.
And speaking of burnout, I want to close the show with this if I can. If you think that the school always has the best interest of your child at heart, then if you live in a hot environment state from Southern California, Arizona, all the way across to the southeastern United States, as the school year is extended because of COVID and other things that happen, go into your schools the last 3 weeks of school when they turn off the air conditioning because they want to save money, and those kids are sitting in classrooms where it's 90 degrees plus. Imagine you going to work and sitting in your desk at 90 degrees plus and someone telling you by law you have to sit there and sweat like a dog and try to produce and finish up a school year and take all these tests and so forth. Then you tell me how much that school district cares about your child. And I'm going to leave it at that.
I agree with you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for listening in to Table Talk. We look forward to your comments. You know how to get a hold of us at tabletalkshow@gmail.com. And Giasia, where can they also reach us?
They can also reach us on the platform Instagram, and the handle for that is Talking Table, TOKING_table. Again, on Instagram at TOKING talking_table.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Giasia. And may all of you have success with your children going through our school systems. whether public, private, or charter, or homeschooled. Thank you. And now from one of our fine fake sponsors here on TableTok. When you're feeling low, kinda left behind, like you got skid marks from being tossed left on Tinder for a year, take a break. Enjoy a moment. Maybe you're just out of sorts. That's right, Sorts, the new healthy break food that is storming the country. It's a bite-sized piece of heaven guaranteed to build muscle, lose fat, and pick up that damaged ego. Sorts snacking crackers come in 5 delicious flavors like broccoli surprise, pickled pig's feet stomp, rutabaga bonanza, and that morning delight to get you going, wasabi wake-up call. So when you need to feed after smoking that weed, forget those diet sugar bombs and start feeling sort of good again. Our disclaimer: Sorts crackers are non-GMO, gluten-free, and made from rain-free vegetables and artificial flavoring without the addition of preservatives like formaldehyde. Sorts, available at your favorite pharmacy and grocer, where our other fine products are sold, like gastric bypass milkshake and shellfish allergy lobster bisque. Sorts, a cracker lover's crunchy highway to paradise.